onto Facebook. It is on Facebook, so we're gonna get going. We got a lot of stuff to cover here, and yeah, about 2 months of stuff to cover, actually 2-3 months really. We didn't have a full complete community meeting in June, and in July we had a meeting regarding Project Homekey on PCH, and then on August I was gone for ICA and Independent Cities Association. I'll get to that in a minute. So without further ado, let me start off with the most important topic that is regarding the city, and that is our budget. Our budget was recently passed, $101 million budget in June, included a lot of new projects for the city of Redondo, a lot of resident focused projects. Councilmember Lowenstein and I put together the budget. We took the staff budget that they came before us, and we heavily modified it, amended things, added things, took things out, add things in. Let me see if I have actually the budget motion here. You guys can actually look at the motion itself. We spent a lot of time on it. Councilmember Lowenstein and I did the budget last year as well, and it's you know, a bit of a bear. Last year we were cutting things still. We're kind of, and we had some projects coming up, and this year we are net positive, record revenues in the city of Redondo Beach right now. You heard that right, record revenues in the city of Redondo Beach for our general fund, and that for a variety of reasons. Here, let me share my screen. And one of the reasons why we have, let me change the view here as well. Speaker, and then we'll change share screen. There you go. Here is the budget that Councilmember Lowenstein and I put together. We essentially accepted most of the decision packages, which is the staff recommendations. We approved some, we modified some, and we declined one for the fire department intern program. There's a lot of different requests the staff had, which we modified. Our city manager, Mike Wazanski, did a really good job this year. He went to every single commission, introduced himself, said hello, and said, what do you want to see out of the budget this year? What's important to you? And so that's why Councilmember Lowenstein and I really spent a lot of time, or didn't have to spend a lot of time, modifying the recommendations that staff gave to us, because it really had a lot of the community involvement, community needs. And so we took a lot of the money that was left over from the bond proceeds last year. So if you remember, last year we paid off a $224 million bond for the pension obligations. Well, we had what we did last year is we did an interest only payment, and so the principal we had left over, and with the principal we used to invest into the city, into CIP projects such as parks, roads, infrastructure, city hall. So things that would be paying off long term. The bond agents last year, when they saw that, gave us a great great bond rating, 2.82%. And the reason why I'm going over this right now is because we know what the interest rates are doing right now. I was just at an event this last August, and I'll tell you that we were front and center with hitting it on the pretty much the bottom of interest rates. And we're a model for other cities for doing what we were able to do, save over $100 million. You know, putting together a budget, you'll see here, we added a lot of small projects and large projects, mostly parks. And what you'll see in here are the different types of funds. So Quimby funds, you have the general fund, which is where all the tax revenues goes into. The Quimby fund is a fund when any net new project is built, every net new house, house or resident is built, they pay a fee, and that fee goes into what's called the Quimby Fund, and that is geared towards parks. We have a traffic calming fund, so we'll just kind of end up putting in $500,000 into the traffic calming fund, and then we will assign individual projects to that fund. There's enterprise funds, which are like the harbor and the state tidelands fund. What's important about the harbor and state tidelands fund, we are maintaining the pier parking structure in the harbor like it has never been done before. And the staff wanted to put, I think, $4.3 million into the pier parking structure. We put in about $2 million. We're gonna get the funding for next year out of a different source for that. There's grant funding available for a lot of these projects that we're doing. And essentially, at the end of the day, we're utilizing, blending and braiding grant funds, state funds, Quimby funds, general fund revenue, and creating the budget and seeing however much we can take from places other than our general fund. So there's a lot of sources of revenue that we have for us. And to that specifically, the Quimby Fund, which is our parks fund, because of the development, we've been doing so much development that's been happening in Redondo. It's well funded, and it's not directly from taxpayer funds. So that's kind of a big deal. We're also, speaking of grants, we put in $75,000 for a company. In fact, we just approved that contract this last go around to start writing grants for us. So the way grants used to be done for some of these companies is you just hire them, and then when they win a grant, they write a grant for you, and when they win it for you, they get 10% off the top or 5%. Well, that's not allowed anymore. So now we have to pay outright to a company that will write grants for us if we look for a particular type of grant, from police, fire, public works, parks, whatever it may be, roads. And they write the grant. Whether they win or lose, they get paid to write the grant. So there are some cities that do a fantastic job, like Culver City does a fantastic job, and they hired a grant writer, full-time grant writer from the city of Los Angeles, and they get a lot of their money from grants. Speaking of grants, we'll be getting into that further. Actually, we might as well get into that now. We just had a conversation with Public Works, and actually last week with, I'm gonna write this down, Public Works grants. Last week we got $500,000 from the state of California. You actually heard it here first at the community meeting in June when we were discussing specifically the Project Homekey project. The state gave us $500,000, and we found out through that because we had State Senator Ben Allen, one of his chief of staff, and he said to us that they got it carved out of the budget, and as long as it's going to got voted on the way it was, we were going to get $500,000 for the outdoor homeless court that we started during COVID. What's important about that? Well, overall, the question has come up many times: how much do we spend on homeless services in Redondo Beach? Well, we spend a lot through direct and indirect costs. So indirect costs are if a police or fire call for service and it's homeless related, well, we pay for that because that's time. That's one time. That's an hour of time that they're spending doing something that they wouldn't be doing something else. And of course, there are the direct costs. So pallet shelter program, for instance, we put in, we have a homeless outreach coordinator. We have actually two of them. We have a mental health clinician that we just signed up for $40,000 a year, which we're working with other cities. So this $500,000 is going directly to the homeless courts. This is something that was started during COVID, and we are also sharing the homeless court with Hermosa. And sharing of these costs and services is something that I've really been pushing for, because we shouldn't be shouldering all of these costs on our own. And in total, the $1.7 million worth of grants me pull it up here from, I'll stop sharing my screen and see if I can get, let's see, it was actually just at the August 9th meeting, I believe, when Assemblymember Al Mursucci came to the council and talked and gave us the proverbial check. And let's see here, we get Homes Court grant. So here we go. Supervisor Hahn gave us $82,000 for Homeless Court a couple of years ago. South Bay COG Innovation Grant, we got $185,000. This CCG OIHS grant for pallet shelter, $584,000. That is a LA County grant to run a pallet shelter program. The CEO from CEO's office from LA County gave us $40,000 for that same thing as well. And DHS administrative fees, and then straight out Measure H funds. So Measure H funds are funds that the county voters voted on. I believe it's a 1% sales tax, and so we got 1% of that money. Just so everyone knows, South Bay, traditionally speaking, is a tax donor. So we donate a lot of money to the tax system, and then we get very little back. So Measure H funds has been a sore point for a lot of the elected officials that we've had in the South Bay, because we give a lot of money but don't get a lot back. In this case, we're actually getting some money back from Measure H funds. So, and those are all pallet shelter improvements and pallet shelter operational costs. So all that over the last few years adds up to about $1.7 million. We had a couple of thousand, but what is it about here? About $60,000 actually no, 60 plus 584, $640,000 in some of these grants that were not quite directed yet in some of these specific funds. And so we took action on the 9th meeting of August 9th to direct those monies to a certain fund. So the it was quite a lot of money coming into us, and it's a lot of how do I say this? A lot of action is happening here in Redondo when it comes to homelessness. There's been recently an uptick on homelessness along our beaches, if you know, by the pier and by Ruby Street. But what you're noticing is, if you are noticing, there's a lot of new homeless people that are showing up in Redondo right now. And what's happening is they're coming in from other cities who are enforcing their anti-camping laws. And they're looking for places to go where they won't be wrestled with, and they'll be left alone, and they can just set up camp. Well, Redondo's not the place. We have services. We offer things. We offer a pallet shelter program, amongst many other programs, and so they can't just hang out here in Redondo. So you're seeing people flow through Redondo. In fact, I was just having a conversation with someone today regarding this. The beaches are very active with the lifeguards down there, are very active with reporting when somebody shows up underneath the lifeguard tower, and they get moved along very quickly. So you're not seeing what you're seeing in other communities. Speaking of grants, Public Works did a great presentation just the other day regarding living streets. We're getting a lot of money through state and federal funds, South Bay COG, for grants for our living streets, and the way we design our streets, the way we pave our streets, using different methods to keep our streets in good shape. If you notice, some of you guys are getting streets that have what's called a slurry seal on top. Before I got elected, we weren't doing that in Redondo. Slurry seal is kind of that really liquidy asphalt type of filler material that goes on top of the asphalt and extends the life of the street. So there's a whole slew of new projects that we're doing on streets. So let's see what else about our budget that I could talk about that was big. There was a couple of things: major facilities funds, credit card processing, Zoolager Park. Super Bowl. So we added a few dollars for certain events in Redondo. So for instance, the Riviera Village Summerfest and Holiday Stroll, and the Riviera Village Trick or Treat Stroll. We're given, all these events that we have in Redondo all pull permits, and part of the permit process is they have to pay for costs that are associated with the services, and either taking parking or taking services. So what we've done here is we've given a credit to some of these events, so to speak, credit in terms of not if there's a $10,000 bill, we give them a $2,500 credit or $2,000 credit. So we didn't have that. We cut that out of the budget a couple of years ago. And so that's kind of come back a little bit nowhere near to what it used to be. Let's see here. Commission interviews. So for those of you that would like to be on a commission, you're a little bit late, but you can still put in your application. Please put your application in if you're interested. In July, I believe it was July 19th, I want to say, maybe it was the 12th. Well, let me find out right now. No, July 12th. Yes, July 12th, we had a commission interviews. So usually it's just that one item on the agenda, but this time around, we had a couple of other items on the agenda because we've been quite busy, and our city manager is making us work quite a bit in July, and interviewed about a dozen people in July. There's not that many spots that are open. There's probably only about 5 or 6 spots that are open, just the way it kind of works through the process. So there aren't a lot of holes to fill. There'll be a lot of reappointments, and the way it kind of works is we interview, say hi to everyone comes down, and then we as council members give our recommendations to the mayor. The mayor puts together a list and then comes together back in September and says, this is what I'd like to have as my commissioners, and we approve or deny. It went quite smoothly this last year. It was just a simple receive and file and accept his choices. We also have, let's see here. We also have on the 12th, we had an item for a recall petition for our District 4 council member. So for those of you that don't know, there is a group called Catalyst Company, and they have filed for a couple of petitions here in Redondo and qualified them for the ballot. First thing that they qualified was a cannabis ordinance that is, because let me back up for a moment. Redondo Beach has a moratorium on any retail sales of cannabis, whether that is delivery or that is retail in person. Well, what's important about that? Well, anyone can have cannabis delivered to their home right now. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter. It will, technically speaking, it does matter, but it's illegal if you get it delivered to you or you buy it at retail store. But it's happening everywhere around us. Our city police and attorney have been very active in shutting down actual retail locations. In fact, there was a church that was recently shut down. But the industry itself is very frustrated with the lack of movement. And one thing I've said with getting retail cannabis allowed for legal retail sales, and one thing I've said for a long time now is elected officials are very conservative, but yet the electorate and residences of pretty much most cities are out there buying and consuming the product. So that kind of leaves us at odds as to what's happening in the industry. And so the industry has been taking the bull by the horns, so to speak, and filing these petitions in certain cities, which end up being voter-led initiatives, which people will get to vote on whether they want to allow retail cannabis. And they spent probably around $200,000 to get the cannabis petition onto the ballot. They qualified at the end of January, early February. And in addition to that, when they started doing that, they realized that this is not a friendly council to them. There's a long story with that in and of itself. In mid-February, they started a recall petition on Councilmember Zain Obaji, a highly effective and motivated council member who gets things done, who quite honestly called them out for their antics and who they are. And then they spent $295,000 to qualify a recall on him. So we have, when we were officially noticed on the 12th, we have 12 days from that point in time to put it onto an election cycle and get it voted by the members of the residents and voters, the electorate. And there's very specific guidelines as to how and when the election goes on in a city for a recall, because they know that a lot of games are played about people not putting it onto the agenda. So there is so since they got both of these items ready to go for an election cycle here in Redondo, I worked with Councilmember Lowenstein on this, and we said we're going to hold a special election here in Redondo to have both of these items: the cannabis item, the petition to allow retail cannabis, and then to have the special election as well, all at the same time. These guys have paid for everything, lock, stock, and barrel. They motivated or paid, I should say, paid the people to go out there and get signatures for both of these items. And so we're going to be able to have a discussion separate from the November 8th election cycle. And one of the reasons why we're able to do this is because SB 415 allows us in the city of Redondo to hold our own elections. As you know, we don't have council, mayor, treasurer, city attorney, and city clerk elections in an even year like we're having right now on November 8th. Instead, or November 9th, I think it is. Instead, we actually fought the state because the state tried to force us to move it over, and we won that lawsuit. Lock, stock, and barrel, just won it. And we're taking advantage of that, and we're going to have a special election on October 19th for both of those items. And I could tell you right now, going into the next item, actually I'll look for something here. It has awoken the special interests out there, and the special interests who are spent $200,000 and over $500,000 at this point in time to get both of those items onto the election cycle. They are highly motivated because they also have a cannabis petition in the city of Hermosa and a cannabis petition in the city of Manhattan, essentially the same exact one. And they also had one in El Segundo as well. So the same petition that was filed in Redondo was filed in Hermosa, Manhattan, and El Segundo. Well, the only difference being in El Segundo, the signator or the ballot proponent is the official verbiage. It has to be a resident who is in order to get a petition to get signatures for it and on the ballot, there has to be a single resident who is a voting member of that city who will sign on and say, I would like to get this particular petition onto the election cycle on the ballot. And in El Segundo, that particular ballot proponent withdrew their signature in El Segundo. And it's been a large conversation at the city of El Segundo council meetings. Every city is handling all of this particular cannabis initiative differently. Manhattan Beach is not going to do anything other than put on a 20% tax on the ballot and say, if you want it, you can say yes to this. And oh, by the way, we have a tax set at 20%. So that's their response. is we don't want it here in the city, but we this is qualified for the ballot. If you vote yes, you also have a choice as to whether or not you want to charge 20% tax. City Hermosa is doing something a little bit different as well. They're going to put, I believe, just the item itself onto the ballot, and they have passed a delivery only, allowing for delivery only in Hermosa Beach for outside delivery. And they are working on their own cannabis ordinance that would be voted on by the electorate as well. I'm not sure if they got that together yet in Hermosa Beach, but that's what they were working on and moving forward with. They had a community, what's it called? A community group that came together and said, kind of like our focus group, I should say, and they had, just like we had actually for 2 or 3 years. So they came together and came up with recommendations to the city council as to what they wanted to see in Hermosa Beach. And so that leaves us in Redondo Beach. Redondo Beach, we've been working on our own cannabis petition for many years now. Since 2017 or 18, we started a cannabis task force. And what's interesting about that is when this petition got filed, the petitioners filed it last August. Their task force got going again. A city manager came up with the recommendations. We started moving forward with our own ordinance, and we had our own first reading of our ordinance back in, I believe it was July, and it came back to us at the first meeting in August. And Councilmember Lowenstein was not there, and neither was Councilmember Obaji. And so it was just the three of us, and Councilmember Horvath and I voted to approve the first reading of our ordinance, and Councilmember MD decided to vote no on the cannabis ordinance. So while it was a 2-1 vote, all ordinances and resolutions in Redondo Beach have to have a three affirmative votes. So it didn't pass. So we came back here in mid-August, August 16th, and we had a full council, and it passed unanimously as a first reading on August 16th. Every single council member, including Councilmember MD. So why she changed her mind and then came back and said yes again, unknown. So there's a lot of speculation out there with that, but we do have our first reading. So our second reading will come in September, and on the first meeting of September, and then 30 days after that. So that would be October 2nd, I want to say. So the first meeting is September 6th. So then October 5th, October 6th. Oh, hold on, sorry, take that back. September 6th is our first meeting in September. And then that means October 4th, Tuesday, October 4th, we will have our own cannabis ordinance, which will allow the our cannabis ordinance, just to clarify for everyone, is just zoning to allow where a retail location would be allowed. There's multiple steps after this, so you have to choose a process how you're going to choose someone. And of course, there's implementation phase and then a taxation phase. So we will have something on the ballot in March for taxation, a 5%, roughly a 5% tax for retail. And all taxes, general fund taxes, all new taxes actually have to be voted on with a 50% majority, 50% plus one. And then on top of that, if the tax is directed to a specific fund, if you remember what I was talking about the budget, if you would say the cannabis tax was to go to the police fund or education fund or Quimby fund or something like that of that nature, it has to get a 2/3 majority vote, so 66% vote. So much higher threshold if you want to direct that money to a specific location. So that's that's the really short of the long conversation of cannabis in Redondo. So we have just another special interest here in Redondo Beach that is moving forward with multiple elections, that they're ballot measures and ballot items, I should say. And it's gotten quite a bit of press, and as it should, and we'll be able to have our conversation here in Redondo specifically for that. It's completely separate than the November, the 8th or 9th election that we're having come November, where the governor is on the docket for re-election. So any questions there? If there's any questions, any comments, hands up, let me know. Otherwise, I'll go to the next item. I don't see anything there. Will be extensive fines or permit. So illegally obtained cannabis. Yeah, that's a great question regarding extensive fines regarding illegally obtained sourced cannabis. You know, I think what you're seeing in cities like Culver City, West Hollywood, that have had this, when you provide the opportunity for legal retail pathways, you will get more compliance. With that said, there will always be that gray market and that black market. This gives the opportunity for each individual city to have more resources, i.e. funds, to fund police and education and enforcement. So I think you'll see, especially here in Redondo, where we've had multiple retail locations that came up illegally, that those will all be stomped out, because it's easier to get rid of an illegal cannabis dispensary than when you have a legal method versus when you don't have a legal pathway to sell the product. And of course, all this comes with the state restrictions on top, which is testing and ensuring that from what's called from seed to sale, the product is properly licensed and taxed, from growing to manufacturing, if you're using consumable product, to the actual sale and consumption. So right along with the October 19th special election, legal stores buying avoid taxes. Yeah, there's a whole other item there with avoiding taxes, selling illegally obtained product. That's specifically why we're trying to get past this right now, on getting past having a moratorium. We need to have something in place to allow the legal buying of cannabis. And by the way, just so everyone knows, our current smoking laws also apply to cannabis. So there's no smoking outside. There's no smoking of cannabis on public pathways at the beach. And so the smoking action or smoking aspect also applies to cannabis as the same as it does for tobacco. So I got a lot of those questions. And I also got questions regarding 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds cannot buy it, even though they have to have a certain the facility where they buy it from has to have a certain license, and those licenses aren't really given out anymore. So this brings us to the next topic I have here, which is another special interest here in Redondo Beach. Leo Polstikov, the guy who owns the AES power plant site, when I was saying to you earlier about how we had all these cannabis guys spending over $500,000 in Redondo Beach to get 2 ballot items on in the election. Well, his partner down there, his now new partner, is renting an office space from Leo. If you know, from across the street from the AES location where the power plant is at, is the old C Lab location. Well, in that location was the Waterfront Education Center. And the Waterfront Education Center is a place that teaches kids and youth about the ocean, brings them out to the ocean, and teaches them to kayak, teaches them all about the ocean, gives them some studying time in their location. at the C Lab, and then they bring them outside. So it's kind of a combined effort. So book work and field experience. Well, they've been kicked out of their location so that the Catalyst guys, Elliot Lewis and his whole cadre of friends can rent for free that building and run their campaign headquarters from that location. So it's all connected, folks. It's really simple. And I'm bringing up the AES site because this last week in the newspapers, last week Friday, I believe it was, maybe Thursday, the guy that owns the site, the AES site, came out with a plan for 2,400 net new units on the AES waterfront site. He's using this little state law called SB 330. And SB 330 is a law that was passed about 3 years ago. And if you have a housing project with the zoning that goes along with it, and a certain percentage of the housing units are low income or affordable units, and the project will be built with what's called labor. There's a specific term for it. Forgot the term right now. Terminology, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point here is if there's labor going to be involved in rebuilding the project, there's low income or affordable housing associated with the project, then the project gets administrative approval. Well, the plan is ridiculous. What was come out with, absolutely ridiculous, I should say, because there's that location is zoned for a park, a polluted park at that, because it needs to be cleaned up. There's a power plant that's been there for 60, 70 years. Prevailing wage. Thank you very much, Jerome Chang. Yes, prevailing wage. And so only thing you could do with that particular location is put a park there, or conditional use for a for utility, which in this case is a zoning, is utility, which is power plant. So he doesn't have zoning for commercial, hotel. He doesn't have zoning for residential. He doesn't have zoning for institutional or industry or anything. All he can do is build a nice giant park at that particular location. And there's been, I believe, 5 votes, at least 3 votes, if not 5 votes, to keep that and make that a park. And so therefore his application for adding the state bill 330 on there, Senate Bill 330 that was passed a couple of years ago, can't be used because he doesn't have the zoning for it. So this has just become a giant political voting scheme. It's all connected to the recall that's happening in District 4. It's all pretty plain as day when you take a step back and kind of realize what's happening. The residents voted down Measure B, which 650 residential units, which was absurd because, again, all these special interests that are coming to town for the AES waterfront site, or cannabis, or whatever flavor you might think of, whether it's the waterfront, it's residential, it's cannabis, all of these special interests don't come to the community first. Don't ask us. Don't come to us and say, sit down in a meeting, say, what would you like to see somewhere? And guess what? The community has voted now multiple times that they want to see a park for at the AES site. In fact, the GPAC, General Plan Advisory Committee, that just voted, which is a majority of North Redondo members there, also voted to not put housing on that particular site location. So by him coming out with this particular plan at this particular time is nothing other than trying to add fuel for an election. And he's showing he wants to give his allies who want more housing on the AES site more power to do something and say, here's an option. Well, guess what? It's not an option at all. It's zoned for park. It's polluted park. And in order for that zoning to change, you, the residents, every single person watching this right now, will have a say in whether or not you want that to be a park, or you want that to be residential or commercial or industrial or hotel. The only thing he can do there is add a nice giant park there. And what I like to say to people as well is, take a wild guess how much he has officially paid for the 49 acres of land on the AES site. And the answer to that is $28 million. He paid $28 million for less than for 49 acres. So what he wants to do is very simple: get zoning, get approval to build residential, and then sell all of that off to the next person that comes in for him to make a handy profit, a massive profit. And there was a speaker that came in about 2 weeks ago, Eugene Solomon, and part of the lobbying efforts that AES, the power plant that's currently there, submitted documentation to the water board and Cal ISO, all these places, and said that when they sold the property, they said 50% of that property needs to be a park. So all he's going to be doing here is trying to flip this property. He's trying to get the voters to vote with him so that he can take his bag of profit out of this community. This community has showed multiple times that that we don't stand for these special interests that come to town. And this is just one more. This October 19th, if you want cannabis or don't want cannabis, you're going to have the choice and a chance to vote on it. It's an all mail-in election. It's all connected. It's one of the reasons why I moved it, worked so hard to move it off of the November election, so that we as a community can have our own conversation on this particular, on these particular items. So all this guy is going to do is flip the land. Don't think for a second that he's going to actually develop anything. He bought the Sears Tower. Leo Pulsnoff bought the Sears Tower with he's a minority stake owner, and he bought it, and he wanted the Sears location. He had these big plans to do something with it, has done nothing with it, and he's now turning it into some other project, and he's selling off pieces of it, and that's all he's doing. He's doing the same thing actually in Santa Monica as well. He bought a property in Santa Monica and is trying to flip the property in Santa Monica, get zoning for residential zoning, and then flip it around too. I just had a wonderful conversation with one of the new council members in Santa Monica, and he told me all about how Leo's come to town and bought some property out there and is trying to pull the same exact stunt over there as here. So it's pretty amazing when you start talking to other council members. In fact, this council member also had a meeting with or met with or had a run-in conversation with Elliot Lewis. And you know, these people they're all the same. They all work in the same manner. They come to our towns and they're outside special interests and try to dump what they want on our community. But this community has fought back multiple times and doesn't take these things lightly. So you know, it's interesting to see when you meet other cities and other council members in other cities what their perspective is, and they have a lot of the same battles in other cities. And it's important that we are aware of that we're not alone here in Redondo Beach. City of Encinitas, same thing with the housing development. And you know, housing is a big topic because there's a lot of money, a lot of Wall Street money in there. And so this community has made its statement what it likes to see. So speaking of other cities, if there's no comments here, if anyone wants to raise their hand and say anything or comment anything or put it in this chat box, let me find the Facebook side here. There's nothing here, I don't think. I see it there. Okay. There's nothing there. All right. Okay. All right. I was gone in August, second weekend of August, and I was gone for a very specific reason. And it was because I was down at an event in Coronado called Independent Cities Association. And it's a 501c3. It's an association of cities, actually elected officials, started in 1960. And elected officials came together and said, we'd like to form an association that represents cities that have their own independent police and fire. And that's how it was started. We have 2 meetings per conferences per year, one in January, February that goes over public safety, and the other one that goes in August, July or August, and goes over general city municipal items. And it's a 2-day conference in September, or in July and August. And there were about 150 to 200 plus elected officials, plus city staff, plus a variety of sponsors that come to these events. And it's a fantastic opportunity to network with other elected officials and learn from other cities about how they solve all the same problems that we have. So for instance, cannabis, for instance, housing, for instance, public safety, they're all the same problems and they all solve them different ways. Cities have different personalities. And one of the ways that we're solving our problems with the police or the fire department is with our interim chief, Keith Kaufman. And we had a meeting back in April 19th or 16th, right in there, I want to say. And he gave us a big assessment on our fire department. And it basically shows us what's wrong with our fire department, how we need to fix it, and what are some steps that we can do to fix it. And I'm saying this because I brought our chief, Keith Kaufman, down to the conference in Coronado and be the lunch speaker, and spoke for over an hour, took questions. And he was so well received about all the things that he was talking about that there were multiple council members down there, and they all stood up and said at different times, this is great. We'd like to hire you away from Redondo Beach. What would it take? And what's important about it is Kaufman has a different point of view. He has a police perspective going to the fire department perspective. And one thing that a question that I brought up to the group, and with him being there, is something that's in the assessment. And we have a response time in Redondo Beach that's nationally average. We have an average fire department when it comes to response time. So 5 minutes, 15 seconds, I believe, is the average response time. Well, when you call for help and you have an issue, brain death starts to happen 4 to 6 minutes after loss of blood. So your heart stops going 4 to 6 minutes later. The first organ that starts dying is your brain, and it takes 4 to 6 minutes to start dying. Well, we have a 5-minute response time in Redondo Beach, national average. What's the response time for the police department for them to get on scene? 2 minutes and 30 seconds here in Redondo Beach. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. They respond quickly, and that's average. That's probably a little better than other cities, but that's the point here. Is police responds to incidences, regardless of what city you're in, much faster than the fire department does, because fire department, they respond from their station house, versus police, they're out in the field all day long. So it was an interesting point of view about how the fire department culture, how they work 24-hour shifts, and the police department works 10-hour days or 12-hour days, how that affects scheduling, how that affects response times, how many people are on duty. At 2 a.m., we have the same amount of firefighters on duty as we do at 2 p.m. But at 2 a.m., we don't have the same amount of police officers on duty as 2 p.m. The shifts amounts are different, but the call times are the same. And if police needs help, they can call other cities. And so as we work through and fix our fire department, and we're hiring a new interim fire chief. He should be official by the end of the month, this next week. He comes from a different department. We're going to hopefully find out, see how much we can change our fire services. Our fire services are roughly $25 million in Redondo Beach. We have the largest ever fire budget in the history of Redondo Beach, $25.6 million. We're going to be spending on our fire service in Redondo Beach. And yet we have average response times. And yet we have a ladder truck, and we respond to all these minor little medical calls. We have a 100-foot ladder truck, and we're responding the same way we used to respond to 10, 15, 20 years ago for medical calls. And yet medical calls are 98% of our calls, yet only 1 or 2% of our fire calls. So there's a real opportunity to change the way we can deliver fire services as a whole, having our own fire service. We are getting our county fire study, and last time the county fire study came in, their quote came in between 17 and 20 million dollars or so, roughly speaking. And so that would represent, if we would go county, that would represent significant amount of savings. So millions of dollars worth of savings per year. And if we're not able to change our the way we deliver our fire and paramedic safety services here in Redondo Beach, we're going to have a real option, a real choice moving forward here. All options are on the table as to what we want to do, what we can do. So getting a new interim fire chief from a different department, a large department, and working through the assessment for all the identified factors and issues that we've identified and problems. Our fire department has been, shall we say, I think the nicest way that the assessment put it for the fire department assessment was, is in shambles, and we're rebuilding from them. And that's literally what the assessment basically said. It was kept in place from 20 years ago. And so Kaufman is going to be leaving. He's only on an interim basis right now, part-time basis. And so this new fire chief that's coming in is coming in at a full-time basis, and he's going to be overseeing everything that's going to be going on in the city, and with fire service and paramedic service. And we'll see how much we can accomplish in terms of change, how we can deliver those services faster. For instance, Europe has EMTs who are on motorcycles and deployed in the field during their shift. They're not in a station house. So they deliver their services much different. France has ambulances. Their idea in France is to bring the hospital to the scene. So they have a full x-ray machine, they have a doctor, they have a whole array of medical service, and they bring those medical services directly to the scene. And so there's different ways to think about how we're doing business. Chief Kaufman, being a police chief, came through with a different point of view that basically really questioned how we deliver services as a whole. And let me tell you, the other elected officials down in Coronado I was with, it really got them thinking. And one of the things that I got talked to with the other elected officials from the South Bay, because we had Hermosa, we had Manhattan, we had Torrance, all there. And I've talked a lot with them having a South Bay fire district. Why do we all have fire chiefs? Why do we all have battalion chiefs? Battalion chiefs sit right below a fire chief. And then you have fire chief, battalion chiefs, and then you have the fire captains, and then the firefighters. So if the county were to come in down around here, they have their battalion chief for an entire area. And so we could save a significant amount of money if we were to work with Manhattan Beach or Torrance and have a single fire chief and a single battalion chief on duty. And Hermosa Beach has gone county. They've been very happy with their county services. They've been saving us some phenomenal amount of money. They're paying more today for their fire services in Hermosa because they're getting a brand new fire station. They didn't have the money for the fire station. They didn't have the money for equipment upgrades. And so when the county has come in, they're providing all of that for a no-cost loan to Hermosa Beach. And they're getting now quality service as what they had before. They didn't have enough personnel working. So It's ICA down there, Independent Cities. It's a very well respected organization. A lot of great conversations. We talk about pension bond obligations. We talk about water, what we're doing for water, how we'll be able to deliver water for the next 50 years. I mean, think about the droughts that are happening right now throughout the country, throughout Europe. Where are we going to get all the water for all this development in California? We are essentially a desert here. We are a desert in LA. And any that know Metropolitan Water District just gave a notice for 10 or 15 days in September. They have to shut down a major pipeline that delivers water to us. That's a big issue. We all know what's happening at Hoover Dam. And it's it was a very interesting conversation to hear the people from water districts and water managers talk about water. One thing they said was that there's this large push to convert golf courses to housing, whether it's low income, affordable, or regular housing. And they said why it's a bad thing to do that. And the reason why is because when you build all this housing, you commercialize everything, you pave everything over with asphalt and concrete. Well, you don't allow areas for rainwater and even just regular watering of grass and vegetation to seep into the groundwater table. And when you don't have that, or you have very small areas, you end up with a polluted groundwater table. And so they talked about the importance of having golf courses that provide that open space, to provide the leaching fields for water to go into the ground and provide the ground breathing space. So it was very interesting to listen to them talk about how water is a very, we take it for granted here, how much we get from Northern California, Colorado River. We don't recycle enough of the water. We don't reuse it. Our aquifers have been drained and we're not replenishing them. There's a lot of other sources of water other than doing what a lot of people have to talk about, desalination. Last thing I'll say about ICA, because it's a large conversational topic that really affects us, is I will be the president starting in September. We have an installation ceremony on September 29th at Seaside Lagoon. We'll have all these elected officials. Supervisor Janice Hahn is coming down. State Senator Ben Allen, Elmer Suchi, our assembly member, is coming down. We'll have 100 elected officials and sponsors. It'll be a big deal at Seaside Lagoon. We've had, like I said, Redondo Beach has been a plank holder or started the ICA group years ago in 1960. So it's kind of exciting that it's coming back to town here, Redondo. Learned a lot. It was really cool and lots of fun. Next topic, any questions on all that stuff, let me know. I don't see anything anywhere. And my next topic is around volunteers here in Redondo Beach. So on our last, what was it, August 9th council meeting, I believe it was, August 9th or August, yes, August 9th, we had a meeting, and the meeting, on the council meeting, coordination of volunteer opportunities. And this is something I put on the strategic plan, which reminds me I need to talk about that. Write that down real quick. So there are a lot of volunteer groups here in Redondo Beach. And we have anything from South Bay Parklands, who we donate money or give money. The city gives money to, and they do plantings. They do tree plantings tree or plant plantings in Hermosa, in Wilderness Park, along the Esplanade. They had a whole large garden that was built out on the Esplanade, a massive garden. If you go by, they got grants from a lot of different places, from federal Fish and Wildlife, LA County gave, and then also the city of Redondo. They're taking care of our parks. Well, there's a lot of other groups in Redondo Beach. There's there's the 501c3 that takes care of the dog park at Dominguez. There's the 501c3 called Keep Essenot Beautiful that Jeff Ginsburg runs. And the fireworks were done out of this last year. There's a multitude of other groups throughout Redondo Beach. And one of the things I put on the strategic plan was I want to get all these groups together under one tent, so to speak, in Redondo, so that we're all well coordinated, and then have them from volunteer opportunities posted on our website to have them meet once a quarter or once a month, whatever it may be. And so these volunteer groups say, hey, we're having an event at the end of the month. We need some wheelbarrows, or we need some plants. We need some volunteers. Does anyone have this resource or that resource? You know, a lot of these groups have services that or supplies and services that other groups have that would need, and the city has services and supplies that they can offer. Well, what's important about that is right now, all these 501c3s, all these groups, all these volunteer groups that are organized and not organized, like the Rose Garden group at Dominguez Park, they are all working in silos. And one thing I want to get rid of are these silos. So there's these cross talk and cross working, and they work together more efficiently. And one of the ways we'll be able to do that is through having the city manager's office kind of have a responsibility to work with these groups and have these groups come together and have them work more efficiently. So for instance, in Hermosa Beach, the mayor has a monthly volunteer day, and they get a bunch of people together. They just did a painting session. They worked with South Bay Parklands for a planting session, planting native plants. They fix up the park, the diamonds, baseball diamonds. So there's a lot of opportunity here if we look at other cities, what they do. And so working together with these particular groups and getting them all working together is really, in my opinion, really important. And so that is something we discussed there on the strategic plan. It was a strategic plan item. Speaking of strategic plan, we have our strategic plan coming up. Yes, they could gather in Veterans Park Public Library. Yes, Jerome, you are correct on that. You see that old library behind me there? Jerome, you actually brought up a point there that somebody brought up, was why isn't the old library that's here behind me, why isn't that open on Memorial Day and Veterans Day when we have the services, and having some of the groups in there and having that open to the public? It's a great way to have the public come into that old library and understand that building and have some more event items there. And so we are, just so anyone knows, we have an RFP out there to run the old library that's right here behind me. And we met in July, I believe that was. It's one thing on my agenda here. If you wanted to, if you have an event catering business or some sort of business where you do events, you can actually have have an RFP we have coming out so that you can run the facility for events. We're looking at a multitude of different ideas, from having a cafe there to having artwork there, music there, just community run events. And one of the things that was pointed out during the meeting when we talked about this back in July is we have a lot of senior centers here in Redondo Beach, a lot of them, and a couple of youth centers. So we don't necessarily need more senior or youth centers or programming, but what we need is more event space, community event space that people can rent out. And strategic plan. So I was talking for a minute ago about, I put this item on strategic plan regarding volunteer groups, and what were, for instance, the Veterans Park, the old library was on strategic plan. Strategic plan is a 6-month objective and a 1-year objective, what we want city staff working on. So the reason why we're so busy at city council is because we have a very full strategic plan and a lot of to-do items here in Redondo. We're moving forward with a lot of projects. We have 140 plus capital improvement projects in Redondo Beach. We have new programming coming up. We just hired a new person for the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. And so these strategic items is all about getting staff to work on a specific project or specific projects in general, so that we move the city in a goal, in a certain direction with certain goals in mind. The last time we did this was, I believe, in January, I want to say, and last November, December, and we hired someone to facilitate the strategic plan. And we did it via Zoom last time. It was over 2 sessions, and we'll do the same thing this time next week, Tuesday, where we don't have a regular council meeting. We'll have a strategic plan item where the facilitator will appear via Zoom, and we'll work together and I'll look at all the things that have been done and taken care of these last 6, 7, 8 months since last time we met. What has been checked off the list, what has not been checked off the list. And then as we go through that, we'll determine what we're going to put on the strategic plan moving forward as well, next 6 months. So that item will happen on Thursday, next week, Thursday. Both start at 6 o'clock at night. So Tuesday and Thursday of next week, the 29th and the 1st of next week. And they would both be in person at the council chambers, but of course Zoom will be available to everyone, as well as e-comment and emails. So we make it highly accessible for everyone. So Thursday, September 1st at 6 p.m. we'll be talking about the items that we want to see getting done on the strategic plan. And the next week, Tuesday, where we don't have instead of having a council meeting, we're going to have this item on there, talking about what we've gotten done and taken care of. So if there's any questions regarding strategic plan, put up your hands or ask a question. Outreach session was made 3 to 4 years ago. Interesting. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of suggestions, a lot of things that were done. If you remember, the community outreach and getting everyone together under one umbrella was not my idea. Actually came from, I don't know if he's here. I'm not gonna say his name. He's not here. I don't think I see his name, but he was here earlier. It actually came from one of my community meetings. You guys actually brought it up at one of my community meetings about, we have all these different community groups. Why can't we get them all more organized? Because I'm doing this over here. I didn't realize that these guys over there have these services we're working on over here. In fact, there's a group meeting at the right-of-way one Saturday a month in North Redondo, and they're cleaning up the right-of-way because Councilmember Obaji just got them going on that. So yeah, things take some time. We have a new city manager. What's important is with a new city manager comes with a lot of new things to get done, and we are making him work, making him get things done, and we're finally moving on things that we brought up a couple of years ago. So let's see here. Next thing up, if I don't see any comments, I don't see any comments on the Facebook either. So there's Facebook comments. I'm not seeing any right now. All right, 3, 4. Next thing here, we had a conversation August, I believe it was August 2nd, regarding Artesia Boulevard. So Artesia Boulevard is a hot topic for the last few years, but especially in the last year. A lot of work has been done this last year, from zoning updates, traffic studies, and evaluation of a significant amount of work to make Artesia Boulevard safer. And one of the things that came to light was Councilmember Obaji. Let me see here. I can do a screen share here for you guys, so you guys see. So on the August 2nd meeting, share screen. So if you guys see this here, this is the current condition. This is the current condition of Artesia Boulevard and some of the signage that is on Artesia Boulevard. It's old. It is a little confusing. It doesn't quite work, and it's not necessarily really that safe. And what we have here is kind of a new pathway to do things here, or new left-hand turn lane. So if you'll notice, there's an island right in here in the middle of the green. This is an island, so pedestrians can stand there, and it's a separated out left-hand turn lane. And there's, I believe, 7 of them. So rather than having all this equipment here, some of it doesn't actually exist or work anymore, and some of the signage is out of date and needs to be updated. But we have 7 different, I believe it's 7 different locations or intersections that need to be upgraded. Here's some more signage that needs to be fixed, and we're going to be spending, I believe, boy, what was it, $200-something thousand on getting the left-hand turn lane, 7076 left-hand turn lane. Let me see if I see it here. Line of sight. Oh, you have any examples? The left-hand turn lanes will all be upgraded to create more pockets that are curb modified. Let me see if I don't think the staff. I don't have the staff report. If I had the staff presentation, they showed it exactly. I don't have that here. This is directly from the agenda. But basically, what's happening here at Artesia Boulevard is we're creating left-hand turn pockets, safe turn pockets for cars and vehicles, with little islands for pedestrians to stand on. And what's important about that is we have new turn signals that go along with it, dedicated turn signals. I had the signals here. What they're going to replace it with. They're actually really cool. They're totally different than what you're seeing now. Unfortunately, I don't have them here. But another thing we're going to add to them is, if any of you guys have walked on PCH in the last year or two, if you hit the button to cross the street, the button will say wait, 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 and when it turns green, it will say westbound PCH or northbound Palos Verdes Boulevard, walk, go. Those are audible signals. We're going to be installing those at the intersections, pedestrian intersections on Artesia Boulevard, in addition to the left-hand turn lane signals. And it's part of the budget, actually, we put in the budget as well. And on Catalina and Barrel, Catalina and Barrel, we're putting in those audible signals as well for the pedestrians. So when you press the button, it will tell you to wait, or it will tell you to go. Really cool technology. They do it all over in Europe, a lot of different places in Europe. And so, yeah, so we're upgrading our intersections here. If everyone always says the state moves slow, well, we're just getting this new technology now too in Redondo. So I think it's definitely worth the investment. It's definitely worth pedestrian traffic safety, or pedestrian and bicycle safety is a big deal, especially on Artesia Boulevard. We talked a lot about realigning to get a bike lane, but that Artesia Boulevard is just too slim to get a bike lane onto Artesia Boulevard. Yeah, so what else do I have on my agenda here? let's see. We have, let's see here. We had a Living Streets Design Manual. Yes, this was electronic sign regulation. So another item that I had brought forward multiple times and hasn't really ever gotten anywhere. So back, if you guys remember the Legato days when we had approved the plans for Legato Hotel, that's corner of PCH and PV Boulevard. Part of the motion that we approved, and part of the motion that we approved for the South Bay Galleria on the corner of Artesia and Hawthorne Boulevard, and there was one other time, was we wanted to update our electronic sign ordinance. So we do not allow electronic signs in Redondo Beach. Now, this does not mean billboards, the big, 40, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. It does not mean only billboards to allow electronic billboards. It means all electronic signs. So from small signs in windows. So if you see an open sign that's in a business that says open or closed, and neon signs, technically speaking, those are all illegal, not allowed. The LED sign that's at the South Bay Performing Arts Center, that LED sign, the only way we allow electronic signs in Redondo Beach is if it's a school district or the city of Redondo Beach that it's allowed. The school district has electronic sign that is on PCH. Well, one of the King Harbor Leaseholders Association, not this summer but last summer, came to us and said, hey, we want to redo this sign and do an electronic sign for $100,000. And here's what we can do. Here's how you guys can make money off of it. Here's how you can rent it out. You can make a few bucks. You can pay for it and completely replace the old shoddy sign that's currently there. So we put $100,000 aside. The problem was our city ordinances didn't allow that to happen. So finally now we have it at council. And basically what the discussion was about pertaining to was two different portions of this municipal code that disallows signage, electronic signs. And one portion was to allow the electronic sign to move forward down in the harbor, but to go through the Harbor Commission, and to allow the changes in the municipal code to allow that to happen, to have that as an electronic sign. And the other track, the other portion that this has been about is about allowing electronic signs in the rest of Redondo Beach. So we're just talking these small signs, or maybe along the 405 freeway, larger signs, the billboard type signs, if that was feasible. Don't freak out if you're all totally against it or totally for it. It's not coming to happening just quite yet. That track for the rest of the city is going to go to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission is going to have input on that as to what type of signage, LED, the lighting, how bright they are. There's a lot of billboards here in South Redondo, if you notice, on Avenue C or Avenue D. I believe it's Avenue C. Avenue C in PCH. There is a vacant commercial lot that was torn down. Well, they had a permit to rebuild into a new structure. Well, they tore it down, and they did not tear down the billboard. And they decided that, you know what, we're not going to build a new structure. They just wanted to tear everything down. So they got a permit to build something, decided not to build anything, and leave the billboard in place. Well, those billboards along PCH are grandfathered in before we even had a sign ordinance. That's why they're lit up. They don't even they can light those billboards up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But a couple of years ago, there was an issue with that. Actually, they set the timer wrong. We got them to actually get them to turn it off at 10 o'clock at night and to dim their lighting at other times. They have been, nice in that respect. So they've been nice with us, but we can't get them to tear those signs down. They are, kind of blighty, so to speak. But maybe we can get them to replace it with a different type of sign, billboard sign that is more in keeping with what we want here in Redondo. So electronic signage is something that other cities allow, and we're going to be updating that ordinance to allow for that to happen. But of course, it will be going through planning and the Harbor Commission. We had a discussion on the 16th regarding the preparation of a Living Streets design manual. So a couple of years ago, we as council met with other city councils at the library, upstairs library. It was Manhattan, Hermosa, Redondo city councils. I don't think it was El Segundo, and it was sponsored really by the Beach Cities Health District that got a $245,000 grant for Living Streets, to design living streets. What is living streets? It means basically to allow more than just cars on a particular street. So from bicycles to the new electric vehicles, those small electric vehicles that people are buying, kind of like the golf carts on steroids, and to allow bike lanes in certain areas, not road diets, just to make sure everyone understands these are not for road diets. And so, city staff has been really good at using, or I should say, seeing what other cities are doing in terms of painting the bike paths green or blue, depending upon where you're at, to make it very pronounced where the bike path is at, like we have down in the harbor along the waterfront. It's basically reimagining rebuilding our streets to be more cohesive to how our community is changing. There was a blue folder item from someone sent in a long email with photos about how a power pole was right dab smack in the middle of a sidewalk. And that power pole was probably placed there 50 years ago or 40 years ago without any concern to bikers, to someone who's handicapped with a wheelchair. I mean, literally right in the middle of the sidewalk. And we've all seen it before. We're walking on a sidewalk and you have to walk around the power pole. Well, who would put that power pole there? You can't move it over 2 or 3 feet. Does it have to go in that same exact spot? And if it did, or it does, how do we design around that? And so, using a bulb out or using any type of engineering method to make the sidewalk and the street more compatible with the community. So, what else? Let me go through the agendas that we had here. This and 15th. EWIMP projects. So we had a discussion in July regarding some of the watershed projects. We're doing some water infiltration in Anderson Park, as well as some other areas in the city. And water infiltration, or EWIMP, is basically a fancy term for taking stormwater runoff, so water that's in our streets, and instead of gushing that out into the ocean right away, we're taking the first 3/4 inches of rain, when we do get rain, if we do get 3/4 of an inch in a 24-hour period, and getting that water filtered through a filtration process, both the large matter like trash, and then the other matters that like oil and other particulates filtered out and then drained into the groundwater. There's a lot of infiltration projects. We have one in Alta Vista Park, one at Glen Anderson, one at Anderson Park, one at Veterans Park, Fulton Field infiltration has one as well. They're all throughout the city. In fact, City Torrance has been doing this for years. If you see, if you go in Torrance and you see a large hole in the ground, for instance, on Hawthorne, right behind the Chevrolet dealer, there's a large hole in the ground, as well as other places in Torrance. There's a little street, or Madrona Marsh. You go by Madrona Marsh, you see a large hole in the ground. Those are all water infiltration locations where the water comes off the streets and goes into those large holes in the ground and the water infiltrates into the groundwater, gets filtered and gets self-cleaned, and then City of Torrance uses about 10 to 15% of their regular water out of the groundwater. So they take water out of the groundwater, but they also replenish their groundwater through that process. Very fascinating project. We also have the what came up is we also have along Prospect, we have pumps that inject fresh water into the groundwater as well, and that fresh water comes from the Hyperion treatment plant, and the Hyperion treatment plant gives it over to the Edward C. Little Reclamation, and basically they take the water, the treated water that comes out of Hyperion, which is city of LA, Los Angeles, LA City, and they clean the water to almost drinkable standards, and they inject that water into the ground along Prospect in 7 different locations to prevent what's called seawater intrusion. And then it also helps with water reclamation so that they take water out of the ground. So in dry years, City of Torrance can take more water out of the ground. Cal Water, who I was going to have at our June meeting, I was going to discuss that, how much water they can take out of the ground. They don't take any water out of the ground right now. They can. They do have water rights. Just so everyone knows, you can't just drill a hole into the ground and start tapping the tap water, even though you might own your property. That is a big no-no. Water rights is a very complicated manner. Let's see here. Cannabis, and then let's see, items, I think July 5th. So my next item is ADUs, so accessory dwelling units. For those of you who've been keeping up on the housing item regarding accessory dwelling units, state has changed many various laws. We've had to keep up with it, and we have changed our ADU laws. And every time we change a law, it's got to go to the Coastal Commission for approval. And we just got some good news back. They did some modifications to what we sent to them, and the Coastal Commission has approved that with changes, sent it back to us. We approved those in July. So now the coastal zone, so anything west of PCH, is now under the same ordinance as the rest of the city when it comes to ADUs regarding parking, buildable standards, and a multitude of other factors. For instance, not being able to put your ADU on top of a garage, we put that into the ordinance. Let's see here. Last thing I have here is the housing 6-cycle draft, the housing ordinance. So some of you guys have been following the RHNA numbers. RHNA stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment. It's where the state comes through and says, we need 3 million net new units of housing to be produced in the state of California. And in order to do that, we're going to go to each region in California and assign a certain amount of numbers to that region. For instance, if there's 3 million statewide, we're going to assign 1 million net new units to the LA region. I'm just kind of using large numbers, roundabout numbers, not exact numbers. And then the region itself, so the LA region called SCAG, Southern California Area of Governments, which we have a voting member on, they then divvy up what city gets how many? We were left with 2,400 net new units roughly. And in order to get to that, including the affordable housing component in there, we had, excuse me, we had to zone for net new 3,200 plus net new units in Redondo. If you've heard this conversation before, that is correct, because we've been having this conversation for the last year. We are on our third update with what's called HCD, Housing Community Development in the state of California. They've had now the third revision to this, to our plan. We turn in a plan to them. We get comments before we turn it into them. We send it to them. They take a look at it. They send comments back, and then we update those revisions, add more comments, and then we send it back to them. And we've done this now for the third time. It is interesting to note these were all due by last year fall, October, to have it in place and to have it approved a few months later. There are only 3 cities in the LA County region that have had their housing elements, arena numbers, housing plan approved by Housing Community Development of the state of California. And so technically speaking, yet we were out of compliance. Technically speaking, there's a lot of gray area whether we were or were not. Because we were working with HCD, we were not out of compliance. We were fully in compliance, but we just didn't have a fully certified plan. What does that mean? That means the state of California came through and passed a state bill that gave us an extra 3 years to get into compliance, full compliance and certification for our housing plan. So that plan is at HCD right now. The state is taking a look at that plan, and we've concentrated what the state wanted out of this particular housing plan. This every 8 years, what's called the cycle. They have 4-year, 8-year cycles. We're on an 8-year cycle in Redondo. What the state specifically has said, what they want to see is they want to see large parking lots, large swaths of land that can handle large upzoning. They want to see transit-oriented development, meaning development near rail lines, near bus lines, near massive transit, large transit like Hawthorne Boulevard, freeways, because they don't want to have these massive parking standards. They want to be able to use mass transit to go along with these projects, high density, no driving or very little driving, and then no parking or very little parking standards. And so that was the threshold that the state of California has put forth on cities to get these projects or get this plan approved. And so we have a lot of the housing concentrated around the light rail, the green line, the housing or the bus lines, the transit center up in by South Bay Galleria. South Bay Galleria said that they have permission to build 300 net new units. They turned in a letter to us and the state housing and said they are interested in building more housing on their site. And just so everyone knows, the environmental impact report that was passed in January of 2019 said they can build up to 600 net new housing units on their site. So they're only building 300 right now. And one of the things I got in there with that particular 300 net project is 20% affordable units. So 20% of those units will be affordable. And that's something that I got in there. They agreed to it. And they were willing to do that, or 10% highly affordable. And those are big numbers right there, 10% highly affordable. No other city has had those types of numbers. So it's interesting to note when we went over the fire study and we gave the numbers to the LA County regarding our population growth, we are at anywhere between a 5 and 7% growth in the city of Redondo Beach, while the county is anywhere between a 3 and 5% growth rate. And the cities around us are only growing around a 2 to 3% growth rate. So the study that we turned in shows that we have been growing in population significantly more than the county as a whole, much less for the other cities around us. So we're doing our part. We've always done our part with housing, Redondo. We have a huge mix of different types of housing, from all the way from mobile homes to multi-million-dollar single-family homes. So a wide variety of housing in Redondo. And yet they always say to us that we don't want to build housing, or we're not building housing, which is just completely false. We are building more so than ever before, than any other city around us. Speaking of South Bay Galleria, they turned in plans in July, and they are working with city staff. We are using a third-party plan check to do the hotel, to do the housing, and to do some expansion on the South Bay Galleria, as well as a complete remodel of the interior and exterior of the South Bay Galleria. They have now, instead of doing two phases, one giant phase on the Hawthorne Boulevard side of the South Bay Galleria, where the large parking lot is at. Their original plan was to completely redevelop that whole side and add significant amount of commercial, retail commercial, as well as some office space in the back, as well as a hotel, and as well as some 300 apartments. Well, plans change. COVID hit, economics have changed. The company that was majority owner stake, QIC, of that particular location, who swore up and down they would never sell the location or that site, sold off their portion, their interest, to the LVMH group. And LVMH group is Louis Vuitton, Monet, Hennessy. It's the luxury brand, and they are going to be doing a 3-phase or 4-phase approach, where they're doing the outside fascia and inside of the mall, redoing the mall inside and outside, building the hotel and building the apartments. And when all that's done, that's actually 2 separate phases. So doing the fascia, where the grand entrance to the hotel, to the South Bay Galleria, and then doing the interior as well. So updating all of that. Then they will be building the apartments and the hotel and some of the extra commercial on the other side, so on the Artesia side. And then they'll be coming back with the second large phase, where the Macy's side is at, building a large retail area there as well. And they did say part of this, they will be building a skate park, and the skate park is still part of the plan. The outdoor space is still part of the plan. The $2 million that we got for Artesia Boulevard is still part of the plan. So all that's still in place. It's all moving forward. They hope to be breaking ground around Christmas time, December, January, right in there. So hopefully you'll start seeing construction up there to start the rehab and rebuilding of that particular location. Let's see here. I haven't been looking at my comments here at all. So let me go look at the comments online. That pretty much sums up to the end of, I think I have 1 or 2 more items here. But if anyone has any questions or comments, I'll go through the peanut gallery here. Is the gallery going to pay more for police and fire for all the people who will live and shop there? Those numbers require more info. Yes. So, okay. Great question regarding more police and fire. So part of the impacts and the environmental impact report is they will be paying, in addition to what they're paying now, more impact fees, I should say, for Redondo Beach for police and fire services. They have a whole plan with public safety over there in terms of what they're going to be doing with their own private security, and how that's going to be integrated with the City of Redondo Police Department and Fire Department. I believe there's going to be a substation built there on site for the police. They already have one there now, but all that infrastructure will require them to build things there. So to build a lot more traffic impacts and public safety impacts. So Artesia Boulevard will turn in a walk street to a freeway with all the new traffic. Yeah, Eric, you're not wrong with that. So A lot of traffic coming out of Artesia Boulevard. That's why I got the $2 million for Artesia Boulevard, so that we could use the $2 million to beautify and do some work on Artesia Boulevard. What's really important about that is that that's coming out of the South Bay Galleria. When they finally pull their construction permits, we'll get that money and we can start working on improving Artesia Boulevard, from upgraded infrastructure such as park the benches and lighting to actual infrastructure upgrades that we're doing as well. There is a hand that's up. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, Nils, you there?
Yes, Gil, how you doing?
Yeah, okay. A little more clarification on my question about the Galleria. It's one thing when they start paying fees. What are they? Several thousand, whatever. But you're looking at probably about anywhere from maybe 2 to 6 officers that would be required, and possibly even 3 to 4 firefighters, which is well over $2 or $3 million a year, if you would. Okay. Having them just pay a fee and throw out a couple of kiosks for a police department hardly is well worth what they're doing and the money that we end up having to pay for these officers. So my concern again is that there's a more defined requirement for the Galleria to say we will pay the salaries of 4 officers, because if you get it, they may have a substation there, but more than likely they're going to have 1 or 2 officers there almost full time. So that means they may be paying for only a portion. So now if you have 3 officers there, why are not they going to be required to be paying more? In fact, if they're going to even start their own little city with the housing and everything else that goes up in there. Okay, same thing with the fire department. That's going to require probably at least 4 to 5 more fire department people there, and then as well as the parking and the municipal officers. So I think my concern is going to be very much so is that a more defined, oh yeah, they'll pay for it. That doesn't flow too well when later on that we, as a police department, we can't even fund somebody coming out taking fingerprints because, but you can have 3 officers lounging about at the food court at the mall. It just doesn't make sense. That's my concern, is that more direct, defined of what they're going to pay for and the number of officers are going to pay for, not just we're just going to pay for a permit.
Right. So so everyone knows right now the South Bay Galleria has a small substation at the location, and they also pay for 1 officer, I believe, maybe 2. I think it's at least 1, maybe 2. Maybe certain times it's 2. But that number is increasing. So the impact fee, when I say that, Gil, it's directly correlated to if there's this was 2019 when we passed this, so I'm a little bit don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that they will have another officer there, which they would pay for directly. So when I say an impact fee, it's not a one-time fee. It's directly related to having another officer there. And when it comes to fire department, no, there could be a fee involved there, but they won't be stationing a paramedic there or similar there. So that's not for well, I shouldn't say we're not going to have a firefighter there or a paramedic there doing services, but police will be, the increase in police will be direct funding for that will come from the South Bay Galleria. Now, the increase in calls, I think, is really their question, right? So if we have an increase in calls.
Well, both of that, because again, if you look at the policing ratios, okay, the number of officers to the number of persons that they are supposedly generating to service, you will find that the ratios, once everything kind of goes in there, as far as the housing and everything else, are not going to be what the standards are for everywhere else within the city. They will probably, in fact, be getting more. Actually, they will be getting more and paying less, because 2 officers there for shoplifters, just because they put in a kiosk for them to sit down at, and then all the excuse me, the crime that occurs within the parking lot. You basically got a small city there.
Right.
Okay. So therefore, 2 officers, again, 2 officers is not even sufficient now as it is, because why 8 hours a day? Okay. Okay. The place is open probably 10 to 15 hours a day. You do rotation. And for them to indicate that somehow it's covered, it's not, because the coverage, off coverage, is done by other officers that they're paying for when you have a contract like that. So you need at least 6 officers to cover a total of 2 officers per day.
Right. So I guess I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head. It's 2019. I know we have increase in police services. So they're as part of this contract, and there's a direct relationship, and we hire those officers directly for that location. So the fire side, though, the increase in fire services, you're absolutely right. So maybe they are giving some money for that. But if we do have increase in calls for police and fire services, which is what is expected, and in the environmental impact report said that there would be, they give a certain amount of money to that. I don't remember if it's tied to, I'm sure it's tied, but I couldn't say for sure if it's tied to a cost of living or increase, whatever the hourly rate we charge, or we pay the employees for that. But it is a great question, because it brings up the larger point of more housing in Redondo and more commercial activity. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be getting the funding for that. We saw that with the Kingsdale or Kings
Kensington.
Kensington. Thank you very much. Kensington location. Our fire department is there once a week, and do we get extra money for that? We don't. So
but see, the issue with that, let me interrupt you briefly. Yeah. The issue with Kensington, that was also brought up a long time ago, and that was the biggest, I believe, one of the biggest obstacles that people had indicated long before Kensington was built.
Right.
Yet I would say a little foresight to say, well, duh, if it's they're going to show up, then you go in and you say, we're going to charge you more. If you don't, if Kensington should have been charged more, they still should have been charged more. So now, knowing that, going into this, it's rather, I don't want to be another aha moment to where we say,
I have an answer for you on that, actually.
Because again, the concern is this. Yeah, we could have charged you, but we didn't. And then it's a wink and a nod, and there's nothing written down to suddenly now we're back in the hole again.
So there's nothing preventing us in Redondo Beach. There's a budget and finance commissioner, Eugene Solomon, that brought up this exact point regarding services and calls for service to these locations. Some cities have ordinances in place that every single time there's a police or fire call, particularly paramedic calls, let's keep it at that, paramedic calls to that location for a retirement home, the city sends a bill for $1,000 or whatever number it may be. So Kensington, and I know there's a lot of talk with BC's health district, whatever they're doing up there, I'm not sure what they're doing up there, is conversation. There's something that we can do in the future. If you are a certain commercial business, part of your business permit, business license will be, if you have a call for service, you get 1 or 2 calls for free or whatever it may be, and then after that we start charging you. However you want to set that up, whether it's just straight every single phone call for service $1,000, or if it's an increasing amount. Some cities does do that. So that is a conversation that we will be having in the future. I know I talked to the city manager about that. He's very interested in that concept. So your point is well taken, Gil. There's things we can still do to, if there is a significant increase in costs or services, I should say, services to that particular location, then we can still deal with it moving forward. And South Bay Galleria has been a good partner in terms of what, if there's been expenses, they want to pay. We get them to pay for it, I should say, so they don't voluntarily do it. Holly, thank you very much for giving me the exact numbers. There are 10 cities in LA County that have been approved as of August. The three numbers being approved was actually in up to the initial February date, and then this last spring. And then since then, more cities. Remember, in LA County, there are 88 cities in LA County. So only 10 of those 88 cities are approved so far. So that kind of tells you what the process is here for the housing numbers. This is regarding the housing numbers. They're in the RHNA housing process. So it's a long way to go through. As a state that wants to get rid of income. Yeah, housing. Let's see here. What else? Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Harbor Drive is a mess. Harbor Drive is a mess, so everyone knows, because the bike path was put on the wrong side of the road. A lot of residents came up and said that in the very beginning. Mayor Bill Brandon, he's a council member, said that in the beginning. You're putting the bike path on the wrong side of the road with all of these driveways. I mean, how stupid is that of them to do that? And I just flat out say it was stupid. If you look at the history, if you do public records requests, look at the amount of calls for service for paramedic calls, you will see a significant number of paramedic calls for cars and people being hit and having pedestrian or bike versus car. And it's just not as smart to put it on that side. I don't know what they were thinking. Well, I know what they were thinking. They're thinking that they wanted to get bikers to stop in at Shade Hotel. We want to stop in at the Cheesecake Factory. That was literally the thinking. So I always been in the mindset it was the wrong place. I'm glad you said that. Kind of on what is, can't do anything about it now at this point in time. So let's see, any more comments or questions? Raise your hands, let me know. Let's see here. Thank you, Barbara, for that opportunity. Redondo Beach Community Garden volunteers Saturdays at the Relay for Life, Alta Vista. Yes, actually, I need to know more about the Relay for Life for Alta Vista, because I have to work on Saturday, but I definitely want to come by for that. I believe it's a 24-hour event. If you don't know about it, it starts at Alta Vista at 10 a.m. in the morning, 24-hour walk event. They have multiple teams raising money. It's a run walk event for 24 hours, raise money, starts at Alta Vista, I believe ends at Alta Vista, goes around the beach cities. They got a torch, they're doing a bunch of cool stuff to go along with it. They need volunteers, they need people to donate money, time, all that kind of good stuff. It's a big event, really, really big event. I have to work. I'm gonna try to see what I can do about that and get there, but it is a 24-hour event. So I got 24 hours to get there. You have 24 hours to get there. Everyone has 24 hours to get there. So it'd be kind of cool to see everyone there. Redondo Beach Community Garden volunteers on Saturday. Yeah, I wonder what the status of the community gardens is right now. I talked to Mike Klein. You need to start building that fence that's moving up. So let me check my one last thing here for questions. Questions for you. Path, webinar, homeless. Nope, that's not it. Let's see here. I don't think I have any more questions on Facebook or anywhere else. So if you guys don't have anything, no one's raising their hand right now. Everyone's very shy today. Don't be shy. I think you guys are pretty quiet. So next month, community meeting in person will be at Alta Vista. Let me check the dates for you right now. Make sure I have the right dates. I believe it's the 10th, Saturday, September 10th, which is 2.5 weeks. Actually, a week and a half. Yeah, 2.5 weeks away from today at Alta Vista. Remember, all community meetings in person are the second Saturdays of the month starting at 9:30 in the morning. All are welcome from across the city, especially people like Holly Osborne. Thank you very much for coming down and giving me all the facts on housing, on information. Everyone's welcome from across the community. And I will have my online meeting sometime thereafter, probably the probably on the 21st or the 19th of that week. Has our city clerk, last question here, has our city clerk cleaned up the voter rolls? No, the job of our voter rolls is LA County Registrar Recorder. They run the voter rolls. They register with them. It's not a City of Redondo Beach issue. So without further ado, if you guys don't have any other further questions anymore, which I'm not seeing any, thank you very much for joining me. And it's actually exactly 8:30. So thank you very much and have a great evening. I will see you all next month.